Hi, everyone. Welcome to the weekly JupyterLab call for the Ides of March. Today, we have 17 people on the call. I think I'm going to try to change my layout here because I think the layout that I have determines how it gets recorded. And right now I have the grid. So there we go. Oh, that's just, okay, those are my only two choices. So fair enough. I think it'll show the person who's speaking. Okay, so let's see. We have a bunch of stuff on the agenda already, but if you have not signed in, and if there's something you would like to talk about, please add a bullet point in the agenda. And at the end of the call, before the call is over, I will stop the recording so you can make any announcements that are more local in scope, and also so we can do some triage of 4.0 issues. And with all of that said, why don't we get started? The first person on the agenda today is Eric Gentry.
Hey, so Anaconda is always like kind of thinking about the stability and like long-term the long-term stability and I guess the user experience and you know, we're always thinking about what experience people are having if they're getting bugs or errors and when they upgrade and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I just wanted to pose the question, what's the thinking around lab 4 fixing work? So yeah, like what I guess what's the policy and what's the team's thinking in general about that? So I know that some things are going to break for lab 4. Do we have like a strategy for that? Like what's our overall thinking, and is that documented anywhere?
We get the migration guide. It will be polished before the release, because right now it's more like every time we have a PR, we try to put a sentence, and probably we'll need to just go through the document one last time before releasing to put things in place.
Okay.
And yeah, but then after like the implication for extensions, it's gonna be very dependent on the extension. I mean, there are some extension like if they just use adding a side panel, I'm thinking like the search and replace through the file extension that we have in the contrib. It should be pretty straightforward.
Okay.
But there are others. For instance, if you're injecting widget on every cells and stuff like that, you're gonna have to deal with rendering. There's no asynchronous due to windowing rendering.
Okay.
So yeah, it's gonna be really dependent on the features of every extension.
So I think we're kind of like, my understanding is kind of we try to keep like breaking changes to the second number. So like so we're going from lab 3 to, or the first number rather, so we're going from lab 3 to lab 4, and there's like going to be major breaking changes which are outlined in that document. Is there I have the sense anyway that we're kind of just following that traditional sort of paradigm where major breaking changes follow major releases, and things should generally be stable for minor releases. Is that kind of right? And do we have any documentation on like our policy on that, or like what our thinking is in general, just for JupyterLab overall?
We add the section in the migration guide most of the time. Like as Nick said, for 3.1, it was a bit painful. 3.6 also is culprit, and we try to add a section for that in the migration guide.
Okay.
But the best is we try as much as possible to not break API. Yeah.
And
I think there's
API in minors. I mean, we do reserve the known API breakage for major versions. For sure.
Yeah.
Like 4 is going to break 5, is going to break 6, is going to
As-
break. It's a shortcut.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
as
but we-
Nick mentioned, there's been some exception because
So we've done things that seemed like they might not be API breaking, that turned out to be API breaking. I did one recently where I set the target output to a different version of JavaScript, and that actually ended up being backward incompatible in a way that wasn't obvious at first. So yeah, I mean, not roughly, actually, we try very, very hard to use semantic versioning, whether on the Python side or on the JS side, because it's one project. But the reality is we have published minor releases that have been backward incompatible by accident. Now that our only recourse is to publish a patch that makes it correct.
I think in general, we kind of operate on a group consensus for that workflow, essentially, right? It's not really documented in a policy or laid out anywhere, is it?
Well, semantic versioning is a thing, right?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, semantic versioning, but then just the fact that we operate on that, and I guess like when we say we don't want to try to break things, I guess, is that documented or laid out anywhere, or this is just, it seems like we are operating on that as a group consensus, right? Like we try to follow semantic versioning and we all kind of do. So that's kind of how things work, right?
Well, I mean, in the release.md file, for example, we do say JupyterLab follows Semver for versioning of the Python and JavaScript packages. That's not like a policy position, but it is us officially saying this is how our releases work. And we also, now unofficially, we also try very hard for the packages that we publish outside of core, but are still in the JupyterLab org, for them to always work with the up-to-date versions that we're supporting. But, you know, like, depending on how high traffic an extension is and who the maintainers are and how busy they are, there's significant variability in when they hit, you know, the modern version. If you find places in the documentation that seem to have a gap in what we explicitly say versus what we seem to have consensus about, please either just fill it in yourself or write an issue, and you know, we should fill in that gap.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think generally, like, so Anaconda is really focusing on like how to make using JupyterLab and developing extensions for JupyterLab. Like we're focusing a lot on how to make that experience as predictable as possible, make it as smooth as possible for people. And I guess that's kind of why one of the reasons I'm asking these questions is to possibly like document and lay out for people where there are potentially gaps. So it may end up being that some of this stuff can be captured in the docs, and then I can put some PRs in for that. But anyway, that's helpful. So thanks for laying that out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. Okay, let's move on. So the next person on the agenda today is Jason W.
Hey everyone, just a quick reminder that triage used to be on Thursday mornings, but we're moving that to Tuesdays starting next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, that's 1600 UTC. And we'll be looking at new issues in JupyterLab, Jupyter Notebook, and JupyterLab Desktop. So appreciate if you could join us then.
Sweet. Thanks, Jason, and thanks for running it. Yeah, it is a dense time slot. I was just thinking I won't be going to triage, but then again, I've been missing it recently.
Yeah, the main reason why it moved away from Thursday is because the Jupyter Executive Council is gonna start holding its office hours starting next Thursday, the 23rd. And I want to go to those, and I presume other people will as well. We effectively only have about 3 hours out of the day that are convenient to both our West Coast colleagues and our European colleagues.
Totally. It's just that the not office hours executive council meeting is in that slot, but hey, that's all right.
Yeah, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the 6.
For sure. Okay. All right, let's continue. The next person up is Frederic.
There is the performance meeting after this one for people that are interested. So that's an announcement. Another announcement is that I released Lumino 2 final. Yeah. So it's exactly RC1 because we have checked, and thanks to Jeremy also for backporting the stuff in Jupyter in Notebook 7 Alpha. So we have checked that now we have no outstanding bugs. Hopefully it will stay like this. So on the JupyterLab 4 front, the major brokers for starting beta, so being like a important API change or tooling change, is the switch to Yarn 3. The PR is ready, but it's gonna probably need some rebased again, but that's life. The Magix 3 PR, we had the meeting yesterday about it to know what to do. Basically, the plan is to merge it quickly. So it's almost ready. I've seen that David has worked on it today to rebase it. So probably we're gonna merge it and iterate from there. So the main thing we would like to achieve before having the final release of JupyterLab 4 is to try to reduce the number of assets, because currently the code is using, there is 2 versions of Magix. There is one that's Magix full and one that's Magix. And currently we are using Magix full, so it's bringing lots of assets. And so it would be nice if we can reduce the assets brought by the renderer. I think I'm not missing anything else there, but if you think about something, don't hesitate to add a bullet there in the note. Other than that, I will try to get a patch release of 3.6 tomorrow, because we have some fixes for related to RTC, and also to a fix for the undo redo history. That's it. We're gonna finally get back to the the way it was at JupyterLab 3.0 or before. And that's all for me.
Cool, great. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments from Mova? Okay,
Just a quick plug that the newest Alpha 36 should be available for JupyterLab 4.0. So if you want to try out a development build, you can check that out. Please file bugs if you find anything wrong with that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the plug. Okay, next person on the agenda today is Mike.
So 2 performance-related items. First, I found a memory leak, or something which resembles a memory leak. And the mechanism is quite interesting, because the way the context menu handling is implemented for many commands is that the event which involved the context menu is actually stored on JupyterLab application instance. So we cannot release objects which are in any way bound to the HTML element and the entire tree that was attached to that element until the user does not invoke context menu again. So for example, if you right click on an output, say you generated a huge graphic or display or very long output, and try to clear it from the context menu, you will end up with a memory leak, because it will get cleared, but the reference will stay with the event. So I opened a suggestion that maybe we should repeat that and pass the event for each command during execution and when evaluating whether the command should be enabled, etc. in Lumino. That will probably not make it into 2.0 because it's already released, but maybe we could add it into 2.1 and still get that in JupyterLab for a weak map. I don't know. If you have like more specific image addressing Nick's comment, please leave a comment and I will explore that further. The other point is about style calculation cost. So because there is a couple new tools which enable you to look at style calculation cost, which takes a very long time when you have a large JupyterLab workspace with multiple notebooks and expensive visualizations, etc. It can take a while to calculate styles in the browser, and there are three points that I wanted to raise. One is that apparently the scroll bar styling is what is the single most expensive event. So in a tab switch, which takes about 4 to 5 seconds, half a second is taken up, so 10% is taken up by scroll bar styling, which is disabled by default, but the style is always embedded. So browser has to iterate every single node in the DOM and check whether it should adjust the style. Just check the selector, whether the selector matches this node. So that's something that possibly should be optimized in Chrome, but currently it isn't. And one way to address that would be to enforce a different pattern that's rather than changing scroll bar styling on the body level, we would enforce that every single element which wants to have styled scroll bars has to add a specific class name. And yeah, that's a question. If you have any thoughts on that, please comment on the issue. The other one is that when we define CSS variables, almost always those are defined in root, so colon root, so that it's accessible everywhere, but they don't need to be accessible everywhere. At least that's what I think is the case. And because there are so many root declarations and those again match against every single element in a sense, that is an implementation detail of the browser, but that's what's actually happening. We might want to reconsider. That would entail possibly some changes to how themes are developed, and maybe that wouldn't be so easy to change variables, all the variables at once, but would bring some noticeable performance benefits. So again, if you have thoughts on that, please comment on the linked issue. And the final one is like a general note to everyone who's making pull requests, because I'm trying to review CSS in pull requests, but it's always like difficult to note every single pull request. And please try to make sure that the selectors that we are adding are specific. And important part is to never use a star capturing all, to use the standard combinator when possible, that the rightmost selector, because the matching of selector goes from the end, that is always very specific and includes class name. And be careful with some selectors; those need to be attached to a very specific element. Yeah, I hope that helps, and we will get better performance in the future releases and in future pull requests.
Mike?
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Is there already a place in the documentation where we are tracking those selectors that we should avoid? Or because I guess getting something in the CI can be tough.
I can add open a pull request with like more detailed guidance, but there is already guidance on CSS patterns and those like defining particular granular classes which include the component and then a subcomponent. It's not exactly PAM pattern, but it's close, and I think the current guidance is maybe it's not clear enough, but it's pretty good.
Thanks.
Regarding the first point about the context, this is we have to think about this pretty carefully. Basically, we don't pass any arguments to any commands that are not JSON encodable currently. We don't pass any live instance of a thing. Instead, we rely on the command to ask a registry for that entity. And this hack to have the mouse event that opened the context menu was a way to circumvent that in this circumstance where we really do need to know a bit more than we have. And maybe your suggestion for changing the order in Lumino where the command gets executed and then the menu closes, maybe that's doable, but really even that, we should think through the consequences. That seems fairly plausible to me, but it's passing in the event, that seems a little less attractive, because we want to have flat files with a whole bunch of commands that can be executed running a script, or to be able to store basically pickled versions of command args. So I'm not exactly sure what we should do here, but I think this is one of the areas, along with virtual DOM and a few other things, that I think we can probably make some big changes for Lumino 3, unless there's no hanging fruit that we see in an additional API for a 2.1 or something. But I think it's worth having a dedicated conversation.
So the requirement of having an JSON serializable, you mentioned having a file to execute commands. That sounds like an interesting extension idea, but if the command currently is relying on the hack of having the event available on application, that certainly you wouldn't be able to use such a command from a file, because the state of application wouldn't match what the command would be expecting if it wanted to access the event anyways. So that's like my observation, and my question is this required for any of the core machinery? Like, is it used for RTC, or was that just a design requirement that was self-imposed to have this possibility of using?
Well, it's used by the command linker, for example, right? Command linker it's reliant on you not dealing with any live instances of anything, because it's just embedded in your text and gets picked up in your text. It is a design decision, but it's a design decision that's so old that it probably has little things like that do depend on it being encodable and not downsides here. So I think revisiting what the command system offers you is fair. I just think it might turn out to be a breaking change and might have to wait for Lumino 3. I think it's probably like it's an elegant thing to have JSON encodable args and to be able to do all sorts of scripting and weird things. But if so many years later we're not really taking advantage of that, you know, maybe it is a thing to revisit. I'm not sure, but yeah, I would suggest setting aside some dedicated time and getting a group of people to talk about this together. We might want to schedule a Lumino call after 4.0 is out to make a roadmap for the next version.
Just also to clarify that actually nothing is enforced, because I know, for example, in the JupyterLab Kit extension, we are passing object to some command call. And one of the reasons is exactly because of the context menu stuff. We have done crazy shit. Also because it's also partly because we are using React, and it's tough to use the React way with the context menu from Lumino.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Even more reason why we should establish real patterns here then. But I didn't realize that. That's funny. Okay, any other responses to Mike?
And also Mike
Cool.
being coy, major release of JupyterLab LSP and Jupyter LSP just dropped this morning. So good stuff.
Cool, nice.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me about that, Nick. Sorry. Yes, the server component might actually break some things. So if you see on CI that the Jupyter LSP release changed the communication API and it breaks something for you, especially since we are integrating JupyterLab with LSP and we're using the server extension, please let me know, tag me and Nick possibly. But yeah, please, I will link and please go and check out the latest release.
Maybe a comment on that. I mean, as soon as beta is out, our plan is to allocate resources at Constack to start upgrading JupyterLab LSP, like Code Mirror 6 migration, and using what has been upstreamed. So the earlier the better in terms of when we get the beta out, because ideally we'd like to have all of this done by JupyterCon. So yeah, and so it also partially is a response to I think he's not here anymore. The first person who spoke on the call, Eric, regarding stability. So there is, I mean, I really see the JupyterLab 4 release as a pivot, and like, as soon as it's out, like a lot of our focus is going to be on the extensions, like the core ones, like the really important ones, like JupyterLab LSP, JupyterLab Kit, Voila, and widgets, so that they can be released and work well with JupyterLab 4. And be greater is another one.
Cool, thanks. So, okay, let's move on to Mehmet.
Hey folks, I just have a quick announcement on JupyterLab desktop. I released the new version yesterday, and in this version, I added the ability to configure Control W or Command W behavior. Previously, it would close the session window by default, but now you can configure it to warn you before closing, or you can just disable that shortcut. And I also added HTTP basic auth support. Some users were having issues rather when they were connecting to remote servers, because Electron is disabling the authentication by default, and I added the authentication dialog for that. And I also added support for Apple's silicon chips. Now we have two different installers for Mac, one for Intel and one for the Apple Silicon. Yeah, that's basically my update.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Sylvan asked a question in the chat. Is there a blocker to making a Conda package for JupyterLab Desktop? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sorry.
Well, we are using Conda constructor for our Python environment, and some users added other installers like Winget or Flatpak, but I'm not too sure about Conda, if we should create a Conda installer or not for the whole desktop application.
I mean a Conda package for Jupyter Desktop on Conda function.
We can look into that. I don't know. We are running some installation scripts for some operating systems like Linux and Windows. We need to make sure we can do those with Conda install as well. I think we possibly can. It's something to look into. Darian, you are muted if you are saying something.
Oh, I was on mute, wasn't I? Okay. Sorry about that. What I said was there is some more chatter in the chat about this, but let's move on to Nick.
Right, and then I unmute. Yeah, that's how that works. All right, JEP 101 with its little buddy JEP pre-JEP 100 is on there about all that mermaid stuff that I showed last time. So whatever, you know, I'll keep posting it in however many places I gotta post it.
Thanks, Nick. Just to let you know, we have started to meet every week at the software steering console. So first time was this week. So, but hopefully in the coming week we get the ball rolling and we can process those JEP, especially things that are not too controversial, like this one, hopefully.
Hopefully, man. Good Lord, man. Tell you what. Anyhow, I appreciate everybody.
Great, thanks, Nick. All right, this is the part of the call where I solicit any volunteers to say anything they forgot to add to the agenda.
I want to quickly announce / remind that tomorrow there is a 9:30, essentially the same time slot that is currently happening, the second half of it. Tomorrow there is a JupyterLab keyboard shortcuts display review organized by Gabriela. And yeah, so if you're interested, please come. It's on the Jupyter calendar. Yep, thank you. That's it.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Okay, then I will stop the recording and we can switch to the triage protocol. All right, everyone, brace yourselves.